Forget the pyramids. We are traveling forward to the true golden age of the Nile. The year is 1350. You are standing at the beating heart of the medieval world, Cairo. While Europe is still waking up from the Dark Ages, this city is the glittering capital of the Mamluk Sultanate, a metropolis of warriors, scholars, and unimaginable wealth.
The finest silk from China, unmatched quality.
I will give you 10 dinars for the roll.
Fresh saffron, get the best spices here.
Every spice from India, every silk from China, and every gold coin from Africa must pass through these gates.
For the spices, final offer.
I have the coins ready, let me through.
Today, we reconstruct the mother of the world. From the teeming docks of the Nile to the silence of the great Madrasas, we are walking the streets of the richest city on earth. From above, Cairo spreads out along the eastern bank of the Nile like a patchwork of flat roofs and courtyards. The river curves slowly alongside the city, its surface busy with boats under triangular lateen sails. On the horizon, beyond the denser quarters, you can glimpse the older stone shapes of the Giza pyramids, hazy in the desert air. Closer in, a forest of domes and slender minarets rises above the lower roofs of houses and shops. To one side, on a rocky hill, the citadel of the Sultans dominates the skyline, its walls and towers watching over the city below. Cairo, in the Mamluk period, is not a single uniform block of buildings. It is a tangle of older towns and neighborhoods grown together. The original royal city of Al-Qahira, the older settlement of Fustat by the river, and new suburbs spreading outward. Markets and mosques cluster along main thoroughfares. Quieter residential lanes twist behind them. The Nile is the city's lifeline, so we'll begin our walk there, at the riverfront, where goods and people first arrive. At the edge of the city, stone steps and wooden jetties lead down to the Nile. Boats of many sizes crowd the shore. Heavy cargo barges loaded with grain from upriver, smaller craft carrying passengers, and riverboats arriving from towns along the valley. Sailcloth flutters in the breeze, ropes creak. Men shout as they guide vessels in and out of moorings.
Watch your step, these crates are heavy.
The air smells of wet wood, river mud, animals, and the faint sweetness of crushed cane and fruit. Workers form chains to unload sacks and baskets from the boats. Some carry grain and beans, others heavy jars of oil or honey. Bales wrapped in coarse cloth hold more precious cargo: cotton, fine textiles, and spices that have traveled from the Red Sea and beyond it from India and Southeast Asia. Merchants and officials watch the process closely, counting and recording, making sure that taxes and fees are properly collected. From the riverfront, these goods must travel inward toward the city's markets. Carts are less common here than in European cities of the same time. Donkeys and mules carry much of the load, their backs stacked with woven baskets and wooden crates. Long lines of porters move through the crowd, balancing goods with shoulder poles or carrying them on their backs. The streets that climb up from the river are wide enough for this constant traffic, but not much more. On both sides, simple shops sell basic provisions: bread, fruit, and cheap pottery for locals who live near the water.
Fresh bread, get your fresh bread here.
Move aside, make way for the cargo.
As you follow this rising street, the city thickens. The buildings grow taller, houses press closer together. Ahead, a gate in a section of city wall marks the edge of the older, more formal quarters. Guard posts stand at the sides of the archway, and taxmen sit in the shade, watching the flow of people and goods. Passing through the gate, you step fully into the heart of Mamluk Cairo.
25 for the spices, final offer.
Beyond the gate, the main thoroughfare bends and climbs slightly. Underfoot, the road is a mix of stone paving and packed earth, worn smooth by centuries of hooves and footsteps. The street here is busy almost all day. Traders leading loaded animals, women carrying baskets, children weaving through the crowd. water sellers calling out with brass cups and goatskin bags. Shops open directly onto the street, their goods displayed on low platforms or hanging from wooden beams. As you move deeper into the city, the character of the shops begins to change. Simple grain sellers and fruit stalls give way to more specialized trades. You start to see stalls selling perfumes, glass bottles and dyed cloth. The air grows thicker with smells. Smoke from cooking fires, the sharp tang of tanning and dyeing in nearby alleys, and increasingly, the rich, layered scent of spices. Eventually, you enter the district of the great markets, the souks and khans that will later be known collectively as Khan al-Khalili. Here, the street narrows and becomes partially roofed over with wooden beams and shutters. Canvas awnings stretch from one side to the other, filtering the sunlight into bands and patches. Shops and stalls line both sides of the way, so close that pedestrians must squeeze between them. Above, upper stories jut out on wooden supports, creating a tunnel of wood, stone, and shadow. This is the realm of the spice trade. At some stalls, large clay jars and woven baskets are filled with pepper, cloves, cinnamon, ginger, and other imported spices, each in its own heap or compartment.
They smell wonderful.
The colors range
How
from
much
deep
for a
reds
small
and
bag?
browns to pale yellows. Merchants scoop small amounts into the hands of customers to smell and inspect. Other stalls display dried fruits, nuts, sugar loaves, and coffee beans just starting to appear from lands further south. The smell here is intense and complex, warm, sweet, sharp, and earthy all at once. Mixed with it are the scents of incense and perfumed oils, sold nearby for use in homes, baths, and mosques. The murmur of bargaining never stops, a constant rise and fall of offers, counter-offers, and the clink of coins on wooden counters. A traveler passing through might find spices here they have never seen before, but have only heard of in stories.
I cannot go any lower than 40 dirhams for this quality.
That is too much, my friend. I can get it cheaper elsewhere.
Not far from the spice stalls, larger stone buildings open onto the street through heavy doors. These are caravanserais, or khams, inns and warehouses where long-distance merchants and their caravans stay. Inside, you find a central courtyard ringed by arcaded galleries. Pack animals rest in the open space, while goods are stored in locked rooms above. At night, the Khan's gates are closed, turning the building into a small fortified island of trade and conversation. Leaving the dense markets for a moment, you follow a side street where the sound of hammers and scraping tools replaces the monotone of bargaining voices. This lane is filled with metal workers. Open workshops line both sides, each with a small forge or charcoal brazier. Artisans sit or squat at their work, hammering patterns into brass trays, shaping lamps and bowls, or engraving decorative bands and borders around their surfaces. Finished wares catch the light and throw it back in flashes of gold and copper. Further on, near the edge of the built-up quarters, you may catch a glimpse of tanners' yards or dyers at work. These are less pleasant to the senses. Open pits with water and dyes, hides soaking and being scraped. The smell can be strong, so such trades gather near the outskirts or downwind from the busiest residential districts. Yet they are essential to the city's economy, turning raw hides and cloth into the leather and textiles that fill the markets.
Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha.
Cairo in the Mamluk period is not only a city of trade, it is also a center of religious life and scholarship. As you move back toward the main routes, the streets widen slightly and the architecture changes. Ahead, a tall stone facade with a pointed arch portal and rows of windows marks one of the great mosque Madrasa complexes built by Mamluk Sultans and emirs. Stepping into its courtyard, the noise of the markets falls away. An open square is surrounded by arcades, each leading into halls used for prayer, teaching, and assembly. In the center stands a fountain or basin for ritual washing. Above the walls, a tall minaret rises, its balconies ringed with carved stone. At prayer times, the voice of the call to prayer carries across the city from towers like this one. Outside the complex, a nearby street is known for its booksellers and scribes. Small shops display manuscripts bound in leather, with pages edged in color. Scribes sit at low desks, pens and ink ready, offering letters and copies of texts to those who cannot write or who need formal documents. The smell of ink and paper mixes with the more familiar street smells of dust, smoke, and cooking. Leave these learned quarters and turn into the residential lanes, and the city's scale shifts again. Streets become narrow and winding, sometimes so tight that two laden donkeys can barely pass. The upper stories of houses often project over the lane, carrying wooden mashrabia balconies, enclosed latticed windows that allow those inside to look out without being easily seen. Light filters down in thin strips. The air is cooler here than in the open markets. Behind blank outer walls, most houses are organized around inner courtyards. You might glimpse one through an open door. A small paved space, a tree or a plant in the center, perhaps a well or cistern. Within these walls, families cook, work, and rest away from the public gaze. Children play in small neighborhood squares, chasing chickens or goats around a shared well. Neighbors gather to talk in the shade, sharing news alongside bread and sweet tea or coffee.
And it brings good harvest. Wow.
May it be blessed.
Have some more tea. This bread is excellent today.
As the day moves toward evening, climb up toward the citadel that crowns the rocky hill above the old city. The path winds past more mosques and palaces built by successive rulers, each adding to the skyline. From the outer walls of the citadel, you can look down over the flat roofs, domes, and minarets of Cairo as the light begins to soften. The call to prayer rises in overlapping waves from different directions, echoing between buildings. From this vantage point, you can see how closely packed the city is. The main market streets are easy to pick out as brighter, busier lines, while the residential quarters appear as dense blocks of lower roofs. Beyond them, the Nile glitters, and the patchwork of irrigated fields stretches away into the haze. Somewhere beyond the bend of the river, caravans are still making their way toward the city, carrying the next loads of pepper, indigo, and stories from distant ports. Within a few centuries, Cairo will expand, rebuild, and change under new rulers and technologies. But the basic pattern you see here, a city tied to the Nile, anchored by mosques and markets, and fed by trade routes reaching across continents, will remain.
بهارات طازجة من الجنوب. أفضل قرفة ستجدها.
كم سعر القرنفل؟ هذا غال جدا.
سأعطيك سعرا جيدا.
Walk through modern Cairo today, and echoes of the Mamluk city still surround you. Some of these mosques and madrasas are still standing. Sections of markets continue to trade in spices, perfumes, and metalwork, much as they did 600 years ago. The names of certain streets and quarters still recall the old souks and khans. When you stand in those places, you share space with generations of merchants, scholars, and ordinary residents who once navigated these same crowded lanes, carrying goods, ideas, and hopes through the dust and color of medieval Cairo.